Hey folks, this is Miss Wickersham. Thank you for tuning in. This is the breakdown of the LEQ rubric. Like we said last time, we did the DBQ rubric. Since I recorded those videos, the College Board has come out and said the test will be 45 minutes, and it will probably most likely not be a DBQ that you will be getting. It'll most likely be an LEQ or three three short answers, not a multiple choice test either. So, all right, let's take a look at the LEQ rubric. Back in 2017, this was my second year as a reader. I ended up grading about 1,000 LEQs on the impact of the women's movement, actually not the women's movement, the impact of the 19th Amendment and how much did it change for American women. So got a little experience with this. This LEQ rubric has 3 points that are exactly the same as the DBQ, the thesis, the contextualization, and the analysis and reasoning point, the unicorn point. Exactly the same. So you are building on skills that you already know. Thesis, one of the easiest points to get it. Basically, what you're saying is you need to figure out the prompt and then say this is what is going on with the prompt. So for instance, let's say the essay prompt is what caused America to get into World War One, and it's asking you the extent to which, or evaluate the extent to which of these causes is the most important cause. You could say unrestricted submarine warfare is the main cause that got America into the war. Um, as it says here in the decision rules, it can be one or more sentences. Doesn't have to be nice and tidy, but it should be clear. And it has to be in the intro or the conclusion paragraphs. If it's anywhere else, ain't getting a point for it. So sorry about the echo here. So then next thing we have is contextualization. I mentioned in the DBQ breakdown of the rubric, the contextualization is much like the Star Wars crawl at the beginning of every Star Wars movie. It sets you up with the background of this essay. However, if you look at the decision rules, it says you can talk about broader historical events, developments, or processes that occur before, during, or continue after the time frame of the question. So let's say your question is, again, using the causes of America getting into World War One. You can talk about the events before, during World War One, and then a little bit after. I don't suggest you go all the way to, let's say, World War Two or whatever. Don't go too far if you're going after. Okay. So again, that's my contextualization. I teach my kids, put it in the first paragraph. That should be like the opening. And then you throw in the thesis. I also highly recommend you make a connection sentence, like a transition sentence from your contextualization that ties to your thesis. So evidence points. There are 2 evidence points here. This first one is super duper easy to get. You get 1 point for mentioning 2 specific pieces of evidence that are relevant to the prompt. So if the prompt is, what are the causes of America getting into World War One? If you mention, let's say, the Sussex Pledge or the Zimmerman Note, boom, you've got that first point right there. You are done. It's like I said, it is the easiest point. If you don't know anything about it, I can't help you. But most of you have been studying APUSH all year long, and you can pull 2 pieces of evidence to get that point. Here, the second evidence point is a little bit harder. You can have they would like a plethora of evidence that also supports your argument. So there's no magic number for the second evidence point. It's not like you get to 10 pieces of evidence and then boom, you get it. You can have a ton of evidence, and I've seen this in my own kids. I've seen this in a lot of essays, that they literally give you a narrative of an event or something. Maybe they saw a film on it or whatever, but the problem is it doesn't connect to the thesis. They don't get the second argument or the second evidence point there. That's key, guys and gals. All right, Next thing is also another really super easy point. Analysis and reasoning. I like to call this, basically, it's the reasoning point. Uh, you are asked to do one of three historical reasoning skills: comparison and contrast, cause and effect, or change of continuity over time to frame your argument. So if your prompt is, what are the causes of America getting into World War One? And it says, evaluate the extent to which what are the events that caused America to get into World War One? Rank those causes. Be specific and say maybe unrestricted submarine warfare, and America's response to that was the greatest cause. Or maybe you could say economic consideration was the primary cause of America getting into the war. It doesn't have to be, as it says here, it can be uneven or imbalanced, meaning you spent more time on causes than effects. If you just spent the entire essay talking about causes, no problem. You should get this first point. Getting this unicorn point is much like we talked about in the DBQ rubric breakdown. I call it the complexity point or the unicorn point because it shows up maybe once every time you see a unicorn. There are different ways to get it. There are easier ways, I think, to get it. One of the ways that you do is you do both parts of the historical reasoning skill. If it's looking for similarities, you also talk about differences. If it wants continuity, you talk about change. And also, if you're doing causes, talk about the effects. It says explaining multiple causes. I'm kind of iffy on how to how to get that point, especially if you're doing an essay on, let's say, the causes of World War One, America in World War One, and you're already explaining multiple causes. I mean, if you spend the entire essay talking about one particular cause that's the greatest cause, and then maybe you bring in other ones that aren't as strong and explain why they're not as strong, maybe that'll work. I don't know. I haven't seen that. This one here, explaining relevant and insightful connections within and across periods, is a technique or a thinking skill called synthesis. This used to be a standalone point for the APUSH rubrics and LEQs and DBQs. It was a standalone point, but it's very difficult to do because sometimes kids just throw in a very basic comparison and then leave it at that. So, for instance, if you were doing the causes of World War One are very similar to the causes of World War II and how America got into that, but you just left it at that and didn't explain it, you're not going to get the point. So this last part is probably also an easy way to get the point, is to explain alternate views, or basically, I like to say, do the counter argument. If you've been spending, the whole essay on here are the main causes, throw in something that could be considered a tangential cause, not tangential, but another cause that, and develop it. Don't just throw in, hey, here's an alternate cause. Spend some time developing it. Now, strategy-wise, if you are running out of time, let's say you have let's say this video is being used outside the pandemic 2020, or let's say you were doing this and they give you an LEQ and you are running out of time with your 45 minutes, skip the unicorn point, okay? You should be able to get the other 5 points in the DBQ rubric. It's no shame if you skip that one. All right. So let's take a look real quick. Here's what I want you to do. This is the 2018 essay LEQs. I want you to focus on number 2. Evaluate the extent to which commercial exchange systems such as mercantilism fostered change in the British North American economy in the period from 1660 to 1775. You're going to want to say, you see the word change, boom, it's a continuity and change essay. So you got to think, what are the things that change because of mercantilism? All right. Take yourself 40 minutes, write this essay. Give yourself about 2 or 3 minutes to plan it. This is also included in your Google Classroom entry with this. So give it a minute, Give it a shot. We'll come back in the next video, which I'm hoping to post Thursday, and you'll get a copy. We'll talk about it later.